Thunder Rolling in the Mountains by Scott Odell and Elizabeth Hall. Read to you by Mrs. Shoemaker. Chapter 23. I ran until I could run no longer. My heart raced and my breath came in great gasps. I bent over and placed my hands on my knees. And when my breathing slowed, I started off again. I walked as fast as I could. I walked until the stars faded and the sky grew light. I crossed a frozen stream, stepping carefully so that I did not slip, and on the far bank I knelt and broke through the ice with a stone. The cold water gave me new strength. Again I began to walk. The sun warmed me. I would walk until I left this land behind. By evening I would be safe across the border. I had not gone far when clouds covered the sky. It began to snow. Driven by the wind, the flakes stung my face. It was hard to walk. I dropped into a gully and pulled the ermine blanket over me. At last the snow stopped and the sky brightened. When the sun appeared, it had moved the space of my two hands once and then again. It was time to go. Before I could climb out of the gully, I heard sounds. I crawled beneath the blanket and waited. Quietly, I loaded my rifle. Then I lay still, hardly daring to breathe. A single horse galloped past me. I peered from beneath the blanket. On its back was Charging Hawk. His eyes were narrowed and his face was grim. If he found me, I would pay dearly for my escape. While the sun moved across the sky, I did not stir. The white blanket blended into the snow. From 3 steps away, a rider could not see me. I slept. When I awoke, the shadows were gathering. The sun was low, and the first star shone in the sky. With my hands, I scraped snow from the ground. I ate only a little, enough to stop my thirst. Still, I waited. At last, Charging Hawk returned. His horse gleamed white in the dusk. Charging Hawk was weary from dancing all night and riding all day. His head was on his chest, and he no longer looked for me. He passed the spot where I lay. I reached for my rifle. I peered down the barrel and aimed it with care. When the gun spoke, the bullet would strike him squarely in the back. Slowly, I began to squeeze the trigger. Then my eyes filled with the sight of bodies strewn across the ground. I saw the dead people. I saw my mother. I saw Swan Necklace. I saw Ollicott and Fairland. I saw all of our dead chiefs, our dead warriors, our dead women, our dead children. I saw the dead bluecoats. I saw them as surely as I had seen them at Big Hole and at Bear Paws. My father's voice spoke in my head. I heard him say, "This hatred sickens my heart. All men were made by the same great spirit. Yet we shoot one another down like animals." My finger fell from the trigger. The rifle slipped from my hand into the snow. I did not pick it up. Sometime, the killing had to stop. I had no hate left. I watched Charging Hawk ride out of sight. It was over. I got to my feet and walked toward the old lady's country. Afterward. Sound of Running Feet reached Sitting Bull's camp, where she found Whitefeather, who had left with Bear Paws with Whitebird's band. Sound of Running Feet stayed with Sitting Bull for about a year. Then she returned to Lapwai. There she took the name Sarah and married George Moses, another Nimipu who lived on the reservation. She never saw her father again. Chief Joseph and the 400 Nimipu who surrendered at Bear Paws spent the winter at Fort Leavenworth in Kansas. The land set aside for them lay between a lagoon and a river, and sickness swept through the camp. Many fell ill with malaria. Within a few months, 1/4 of the Nimipu were dead. The next July, they were taken through the summer heat to reservation lands in what today is Oklahoma. The U.S. Army had stripped the Nimipu of their only source of wealth, their horses, and so they lived in poverty. Nearly 50 more died in the heat of what the Nimipu called Ikishpa, the hot place. A year later, the Nimipu were moved to another part of Oklahoma, where they spent 6 years under terrible conditions. Housing was inadequate, and medicine virtually non-existent. Almost every baby born during these 6 years died. And by now, most of the children were dead, including Bending Willow. Not until 1885 did any of the Nimipu return to the Lapwai Reservation in Idaho. That spring, all who were willing to become Christians were allowed to return. But Chief Joseph, along with other Nimipu, who refused to embrace a religion they felt had betrayed them, was sent to the Colville Reservation in eastern Washington state. Joseph would never again see the snowy peaks, the blue lake, and the green meadows of Wallowa. He spent the rest of his life at Colville, and when he died in 1904, the doctor listed the cause of death as a broken heart.